Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day. It started with something as trivial as a lazy Saturday morning and a cup of coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, mindlessly browsing my tablet while waiting for the toaster to pop. My wife, Lena, had left 2 days ago on what she claimed was a girls-only weekend at a beach resort with her old college friends. I didn't question it. After 10 years of marriage, trust was something I thought we had built solidly between us. As I scrolled through news articles and random blog posts, I ended up on a travel site. A bright ad banner for a luxury resort popped up, catching my eye. I clicked on it, thinking maybe I'd book us a weekend getaway once she returned. The homepage loaded, full of vibrant photos of the beachfront, the pool, the spa, and then I saw something that made my heart stop cold. There, in a candid shot of the resort's open-air bar, was Lena. Not just Lena smiling at the camera, but Lena with her arms draped around a man I didn't recognize. They weren't posing. It looked like the shot had been taken in passing, unnoticed by them. But their intimacy was undeniable. Her head was tilted toward him, her smile soft in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. His hand rested on her lower back in a familiar gesture, one I once thought was reserved for me. I stared at the photo for a long time, zooming in, refreshing the page, hoping maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But no, there she was, clear as daylight, wearing the blue sundress I had given her on our last anniversary. The man beside her was tall, athletic, maybe a few years younger than us. I had never seen him before. I didn't call her. I didn't send a message or demand an explanation. Instead, I copied the image, saved it quietly, and opened a private folder on my laptop. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Whatever warm, trusting version of me had existed before that photo was gone. I wasn't about to confront her without knowing the full truth. Over the next few hours, I became someone else, a man I didn't quite recognize. I started combing through the resort's site, their social media, tagged photos from guests. I even messaged the resort's page, pretending to be a curious customer interested in booking a package. That's how I found out which weekend package she'd chosen. Her name was on the booking, but no mention of her friends. Just Lena Harrison, 2 adults. No additional names. 2 adults. Just her and him. I checked our shared credit card statement. The booking was there along with spa treatments, dinner reservations, and even a romantic sunset cruise for two. The evidence was stacking up fast, and still, I said nothing. I wanted more than suspicion. I wanted certainty. Lena returned Sunday night, full of smiles and stories about her friends. She showed me staged selfies with women I didn't know, probably lifted off someone's account. I listened, nodding, pretending to be none the wiser. She smelled like sunscreen and floral perfume. Her skin was tanned. Her eyes sparkled in a way that made me ache, because now I understood that sparkle wasn't for me anymore. That night, while she showered, I searched her luggage. It felt dirty, invasive, but what I found erased any guilt. A receipt for a boutique jewelry store, 2 engraved bracelets with initials that weren't mine, a handwritten note folded in the pocket of her makeup bag. Can't wait until we don't have to hide. Soon. JJ, the man in the photo, presumably. I took a picture of the note, replaced everything, and sat down on the edge of the bed. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might betray me. But I smiled when she walked in, wrapped in her towel. I acted like nothing was wrong, and she, in turn, kissed me like everything was perfectly right. The next day, I called in sick to work and went to see a lawyer. Not to file anything yet, just to talk, understand what my options were. The more we spoke, the more I realized how dangerously tangled Lena and I had become financially. When my father died last year, I inherited the house, the land it sat on, and a sizable amount of money in stocks. It had all been under my name, but I had made one crucial mistake: opening a joint investment account for our future. The lawyer told me that unless I acted quickly, she could make a move and possibly claim a portion of it, especially if she proved that the funds had been commingled or used jointly. My stomach twisted. Was that her plan all along? Back home, I started tracking her behavior more closely. She was suddenly more attentive, oddly affectionate. She started suggesting we look into moving or cash out some of the investments for a fresh start. I played along, feeding her false interest while I locked down everything she couldn't touch. I moved the stocks back to a solo account, quietly reversed the joint holdings. I updated the deed to the house, verified the title was clear. Each evening, I watched her cook dinner, laugh at sitcoms, kiss me. Good night, all while wondering how long she'd been lying. I checked her phone when she left it unattended. Messages deleted, call logs wiped clean. But on one occasion, she slipped. A calendar reminder popped up for a meeting labeled J Final Steps. I took a photo, added it to my folder. I hired a private investigator, gave him what little I had, and asked him to confirm what I already knew. He didn't take long. Within 3 days, he handed me a file thick with photos and notes. Lena had been meeting this man for over 6 months. His name was Justin Moore, divorced, worked in property development, no children. They had met ironically at a charity fundraiser we both attended last year. I remembered shaking his hand. The betrayal dug deeper now. I had brought this man into our world. Lena wasn't just cheating, she was building a future without me, and I wasn't going to wait for her to pull the rug out from under my life. I planned my moves carefully, timing each step. I began transferring key assets to a private trust in my name only. I changed the beneficiaries on all my accounts. Lena had no idea. She was too busy texting in secret and planning whatever fantasies she and Justin were concocting. One night, she left her laptop open in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to snoop anymore. I was just looking for something to do while dinner cooked. But when I opened the screen, her email was up, and I saw a message she had just sent. Everything is almost ready. Just a little longer. He doesn't suspect a thing. The subject line was, "Leaving soon." That was the moment I knew she wasn't just cheating, she was plotting. Plotting to leave me and probably take everything she could carry with her. My blood went cold, but my face remained calm. That was my talent now. I had become the master of masks. I made a decision that night. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to be the man left with nothing but questions and heartbreak. I was going to act first before she ruined my life. I would gather every last shred of evidence, and when the moment was right, I would strike. Not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. But to do that, I had to stay quiet. I had to pretend I was still blind. So I smiled as she leaned in to kiss me goodnight. And she never saw the storm coming. The next morning, I watched her move around the kitchen like nothing had changed, like her whole world wasn't secretly crumbling beneath her feet. She was humming a tune I didn't recognize, slicing fruit for her smoothie, asking me if I wanted my usual coffee. I gave her a smile, a nod, the same mild tone I'd always used when we shared these morning rituals. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely. Strategizing, counting steps, preparing for the moment everything would come to light. By now, the folder of evidence I had assembled was sizable. Emails, text screenshots, the investigator's report, photos from the resort, financial records. I'd hidden copies in a cloud drive and printed versions locked in a secure file box at work. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was preparing to expose everything if I had to. But I needed more than facts. I needed timing and patience. That week, I began pretending I was dealing with job issues. I told her my company was talking about layoffs, that I might have to dip into our emergency fund. Her reaction was almost imperceptible. A brief pause, a shift in posture, but it told me volumes. She wasn't worried. She was calculating. "That's awful," she said, leaning over to give me a kiss on the cheek. "But we'll get through it, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, together." Together. What a lie. That night, after she fell asleep, I pulled out my old journals from the safe in my home office. For years, I had documented everything, not obsessively, just little things. A habit I picked up from my father, who always said memories could be manipulated, but dates never lie. I jotted down things Lena said, trips we took, fights we had, promises we made. And now, those entries gave me a timeline of when her behavior had changed, when the secrecy began, when the emotional distance grew. Cross-referencing with what the investigator found, It was clear Lena's affair with Justin had started almost a year ago. What I hadn't realized until now was that her betrayal began even earlier, when she convinced me to add her name to that investment account to simplify our finances. I had trusted her because she'd cried, told me we were building a future. I hadn't seen it then, but now every word echoed with hidden intent. A few days later, Lena had a work dinner. She dressed nicer than usual, wore the red lipstick she normally saved for special occasions. I watched her leave the house, heels clicking confidently down the steps. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys and followed. I didn't approach her. I didn't even park in the same lot. I waited across the street from the upscale restaurant downtown and watched her sit at a candlelit table with Justin. They looked like a couple that belonged together, comfortable, laughing. She leaned in, touched his hand across the table. I didn't need to hear what they were saying. The look in her eyes was enough. Later that night, she came home to me like everything was normal. She curled into bed beside me, kissed my shoulder. I wanted to feel disgust, rage, but what I felt instead was clarity. She had made her choice long ago. Now it was my turn. The next day, I visited a financial advisor I trusted, a man who'd worked with my family for years. I told him I suspected my wife was planning to leave me and possibly drain our joint accounts. He didn't flinch. He just asked me what I wanted to protect. I gave him a list. Within 72 hours, the paperwork was filed. The trust was officially locked. The house, thanks to an oversight she hadn't noticed, had remained solely in my name, something my father had insisted on when he left it to me. I took steps to make sure that if Lena walked out, she wouldn't take the roof over my head with her. And then came the part that was the hardest, pretending to fall apart. I started staging arguments, subtle ones. I'd sigh at dinner, act distant, complain about work stress. Lena responded exactly as I thought she would, with less patience, more withdrawal. She started staying out later, avoiding eye contact, brushing off my attempts at affection. That was when I knew the pressure was working. One evening, I brought up the idea of couples counseling. I said I felt like we were drifting, that I wanted to fix things. Her reaction was lukewarm at best. She gave me a tight-lipped smile, said we could talk about it later. But I knew she had no intention of salvaging our marriage. She thought she had already won. I waited for the right trigger, the perfect catalyst to light the fuse. It came in the form of a business trip. I told her I had to fly out to meet a client for a few days. She barely blinked. "Do you need me to drive you to the airport?" she asked. I smiled. "No, I'll take a cab." In reality, I never left town. I checked into a hotel across the city under a friend's name and waited. I had already rigged the house with a few discreet cameras. Nothing that would violate any laws, just basic security upgrades. I needed confirmation that she would use my absence to bring Justin into our home. And she did. Within 24 hours of me leaving, Justin was in my living room. They drank wine on my couch, watched a movie, then disappeared into the bedroom. The next morning, they were in the kitchen, laughing, toasting with orange juice. I watched every second, my heart strangely calm. I wasn't angry anymore. I was documenting. I returned home on a Sunday afternoon, acting tired but happy to see her. She gave me a quick hug, avoiding eye contact. She didn't know what I knew, not yet. But the clock was ticking. The next phase was legal. I handed everything over to my lawyer, photos, videos, account records, emails. He said it was more than enough to protect me in court. We began preparing the divorce papers with a clear outline of asset protection and an affidavit of adultery. I wasn't filing just yet. I wanted Lena to reveal her final play. And then she did. One afternoon, I came home early from work to find her in the office, talking on the phone. She didn't hear me come in. I stood in the hallway just outside the cracked door. "Just a few more weeks, baby," she said softly. "He's almost there. As soon as he signs the refinance papers, we're done. I'll be free." My breath caught. Refinance papers? What refinance? She was planning to convince me to put the house under both our names. That was her final move. I backed away quietly, my hands trembling. But it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. That night, she made dinner, lit candles, wore the red lipstick again. She told me she'd been thinking that maybe we should make some changes together. Refinance the house, put everything in joint names, start fresh. I smiled, played dumb. That sounds like a good idea, I said. She kissed me, relieved. She thought I had fallen into the trap. What she didn't know was that I had already scheduled the meeting, with a notary, my lawyer, and a witness. She thought it would be just us, signing a few papers over wine. Instead, when she walked into the meeting room 2 days later, she found herself in a legal ambush. Her smile faltered when she saw the stack of papers. "These aren't refinancing documents," she said, frowning. "No," I said quietly. "These are divorce papers." She stared at me, mouth parting, color draining from her face. "I know about Justin, the resort, the emails, the photos. I know everything." She tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "This isn't a conversation," I said. "It's a conclusion. I suggest you read the terms carefully. You'll see I've been very generous. But if you contest any part of this, I have no problem showing the court what you've been doing behind my back." Her eyes brimmed with tears. Real or not, I couldn't tell anymore, and I didn't care. The lawyer walked her through the paperwork. My witness observed silently. Lena sat there, stunned, realizing the game was over, and she had lost. When it was done, she left without a word. I sat there alone, watching the door close behind her. I felt no joy, no victory, just peace. A kind of peace I hadn't known in a long time. And I knew deep down this was only the beginning of her unraveling, because while she had spent months building a future on lies, I had spent weeks building a fortress of truth. And I had struck first. The silence that followed Lena's exit was unlike any I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the awkward hush of an unresolved argument or the cold quiet of resentment. It was complete, like the world had been reset. That first night alone in the house, I sat on the back porch with a glass of water, listening to the wind rattle the trees. The chair next to mine was empty for the first time in a decade, and I couldn't tell whether I felt relief or sorrow. Maybe both. She didn't call, not that day, not the next. For a while I wondered if maybe she understood it was over, that she'd accept what she'd done and move on. But I underestimated her. The following week I got a message from her lawyer requesting a meeting. Apparently she believed she had grounds to contest the divorce settlement, said she'd been blindsided and needed a more equitable arrangement. I didn't respond immediately. I let my attorney handle it. He reviewed her claims and shook his head. "She's posturing," he told me, "trying to scare you into renegotiating. But you've got her cornered. Unless she wants this to go to court and become very public, she'll back down." Still, her audacity stung. Even after all the evidence, even after being caught red-handed, she was still trying to rewrite the story, as if she were the victim. The public part of the divorce wasn't messy. We avoided a courtroom battle because Selena quickly realized what I was willing to reveal if forced. My lawyer had been thorough. The documents were signed, the house remained mine, the accounts were secured, and the trust was sealed airtight. Lena walked away with what little I allowed. Her car, a modest settlement, and enough to rent her own place. The man she'd risked everything for, Justin, was nowhere to be seen when it was all said and done. It took me a while to figure out what had happened there. I hadn't been paying much attention to him after the dust settled, but a few months after the divorce, I ran into the private investigator in a parking lot outside a coffee shop. He shook my hand, asked how things had ended, and then mentioned something that caught me off guard. "Funny thing," he said. "That guy, Justin, he skipped town. Word is he got into some kind of legal trouble. Nothing criminal, just lawsuits, shady investments. Your ex may have picked the wrong horse." I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate, I just nodded. Back home, I opened the old folder, my collection of proof, every file, photo, and transcript. It had served its purpose. I backed it all up one last time, then deleted the local copy. It was done. Whatever happened to Lena and Justin from there wasn't my concern. They had made their choices. I had survived mine. But healing didn't come quickly. That was the part no one tells you about betrayal. You think once the truth is out and justice is served, you'll feel better. That everything will go back to normal. But there is no normal anymore. There's just the slow rebuilding of trust, not in others, but in yourself. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was falling apart, but because I didn't want to pretend I was fine when I wasn't. She helped me unpack everything: how long I'd been denying the red flags, how much I'd ignored in the name of love, how often I'd chosen comfort over clarity. It was painful, but it made me stronger. For once, I wasn't playing a role, I was just being honest. Lena tried to reach out once, a text, just one line. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. I stared at it for a long time. I even typed a reply, several in fact, some angry, some polite. But none of them felt right, so I did nothing. That was my closure. I heard through a mutual friend that she was living alone in a small apartment downtown. Justin had disappeared after a brief and disastrous business venture that cost him thousands. Lena had apparently started working part-time at a boutique, quietly rebuilding whatever life she could. I didn't wish her harm. I didn't wish her anything. I was done wishing. Time passed. Slowly, the pain dulled. The memories blurred at the edges. The house no longer echoed with old conversations. I repainted the bedroom. I got rid of furniture she'd picked. I even took a trip to a mountain cabin, far from beaches and resorts. I didn't go to escape. I went to rediscover. And in that quiet, I found something unexpected. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from revenge or winning, but the peace of knowing I had faced the worst and didn't break. I had protected myself without becoming someone I didn't recognize. I hadn't lashed out or lost control. I had kept my dignity. That mattered more than I thought it would. Months turned into a year. The world moved on. So did I. I started dating again. Not seriously at first, just enough to test the waters. It felt strange being vulnerable again. But I learned something important. Not everyone is hiding something. Not everyone is playing a game. Some people are just real. One woman I met, Rachel, was refreshingly straightforward. We met through mutual friends and had coffee a few times before I told her everything. Not the dramatic version, just the truth. She didn't flinch. She just listened, then said, "Well, that's a lot, but it sounds like you handled it better than most would." I smiled at that. I didn't need someone to fix me. I just needed someone who saw me clearly. The funny thing is, I don't think I would have appreciated someone like her before all this happened. I might have overlooked her kindness, her honesty, her quiet strength. But now, those things meant everything. We're still getting to know each other. There's no rush, no need to prove anything. For the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of what comes next. As for Lena, I don't think about her much anymore. Occasionally, her name comes up in conversation or crosses my mind when I drive past a place we once visited. But there's no sting, just distance. She taught me a lot about trust, about betrayal, and most importantly, about resilience. People often say you never really know someone until things fall apart. I think that's true. But I also think the same goes for yourself. You don't know what you're capable of until you're tested. And when I was tested, I didn't break. I adapted, I endured, I outmaneuvered someone who thought they held all the cards. I learned how to stand up for myself without shouting, how to protect what I'd built without burning everything down, how to strike first, not to hurt, but to survive. And I came out the other side stronger, wiser, and finally free. The man I was when all this began, he's gone. But I don't mourn him. Because the man I am now, he knows exactly who he is, and no one will ever take that from me again.